Hey, what's up? What's going on? I'm back. English with Dane is back. And honestly, I'm really excited to be doing this podcast again. English with Dane was my first podcast ever, a passion project that started in March of 2019. I started this podcast to help my students because I felt like they needed something outside of the classroom that was going to provide value and help them in their process. They all tried to watch movies, TV shows, interviews, talks, charlas, in English, but we realized that sometimes listening to things that are still a bit too fast or complicated sometimes had the opposite effect that they wanted. They often felt overwhelmed, abrumados, overwhelmed by the speed and the complexity of the material to the point where it had adverse effects on their improvement. Nobody wants to feel demoralized. It's a hard feeling to overcome, superar, to overcome, todo junto, one word. So I thought I could give them something that would help, and that's how English with Dane was born. However, along the way, por el camino, along the way, I started to feel unmotivated and frustrated, ironically. I then started a new podcast with a new friend. We launched it, lo lanzamos, we launched it, and it started to go well, surprisingly well, in fact. I felt really free and validated, and I started to focus on this new project more and pour those hopes and expectations into it, and I let English with Dane fade away. It was selfish, really, and naive, and misguided. Looking back, I should have kept this project going and instead try to tweak it or change it slightly. Tweak is spelled T-W-E-A-K, tweak. So I should have tweaked it over time to get it to a place where I could enjoy doing it again. So before we begin, I wanted to apologize to you for leaving you hanging, dejarles colgados o colgadas. I wanted to apologize for leaving you hanging. Not cool. That said, I promise to keep trying to make this new iteration of English with Dane better, and I would love it if you came on this ride with me. Side note, I also had a baby since we last spoke, so that's new. It's been a beautiful and challenging experience, and it has given me a bunch of new ideas about language acquisition and children and how they learn and things of the sort. So for those of you who have kids and who are trying to help them with language learning, there will definitely be episodes with a larger emphasis on that. So stay tuned. One last thing before we start. A big part of making this podcast a better podcast is your feedback. I want to hear from you. What are your favorite sections? What is most useful to you? What do you want to hear me talk about more or less, etc.? You can comment on Spotify, you can write to me on social media, send me an email, etc. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. This episode of English with Dane is about why your accent doesn't really matter and a different, maybe more helpful and less stressful way for you to think about the whole accent thing in the first place. You are listening to episode 1 of season 2 of English with Dane. Hit it. Oh, and by the way, now at the end of the episode, there will be a short section to check vocabulary that was used during the episode. I'll break down a couple of interesting words or expressions that you might be unfamiliar with and make sure you understand them enough to incorporate into your conversations right away. Okay, ahora sí, hit it. The reason I want to talk about this topic of accents is because this idea of having a, quote, good accent is one that I feel we focus on too much and it's stressing people out. It's something that takes up, que ocupa, that takes up more space in your head than it should. So today's episode is dedicated to something I like to call the accent trap. Over the last 10 years, I've seen how the accent trap affects practically every student I've had to a greater or lesser degree. Higher level students often worry about not sounding native enough. Their trap is that they are constantly comparing themselves to native speakers, and that's a recipe for frustration. If this is something you often find yourself doing, si es algo que sueles hacer, if it's something you find yourself doing, my message to you is this: that drive or ambition to push yourself is admirable. It really is. But you also have to have reasonable goals or expectations. The most likely scenario is that if you have learned a language later in life, you will probably never really sound like a native speaker. This is true for the vast majority of cases. And I say vast majority to not say all cases, but I feel like it's 99.9% of cases. Take into account that the nuances, las sutilezas, the nuances of native speakers' accents go way beyond what an average person can perceive. It's a whole field of study in and of itself, en sí mismo, in and of itself. It's just really, really unlikely. What also tends to happen is that people really want to sound like they're from a particular place, so they overdo it, lo exageran, they overdo it. To overdo is a verb, todo junto, overdo, like sobrehacer. So they overdo it. Suddenly it starts to sound a bit strange, and I don't want you to go down that path. So don't overthink what you sound like. Here's the thing. When a student says, I really want to sound like a native speaker, or I want to get rid of my accent, what I hear is, I want to feel more confident when I speak. That's what I'm really hearing. And that's something that I think we can all agree is doable, asequible, doable. So I think sometimes we place importance on adjacent issues instead of tackling the real issue. Learning a language later in life, and by later in life, I mean you had some classes at school but didn't care too much, you weren't the best in class, and now you want to improve because of work or because you want to live somewhere new, etc. So that means you'll have an accent. Siento que podría hablar sobre qué es un acento y si hay uno correcto, si es mejor uno neutro, but then this episode will get out of hand. Se nos va de las manos. It will get out of hand. If sounding like a native speaker is a dream of yours and you'll stop at nothing to make it happen, your best bet, tu mejor opción, your best bet would be to hire a special coach to really help you break down and internalize individual sounds, rhythms, and entire cadences. And even then, that's like an Oscar performance type of work. I just want you to stop judging yourself for not being born in a different country and into a different life. Move on. Sorry to be so blunt, tan directo, so blunt, but I think it's something that some people need to hear. Obviously, in this case, the accent trap is not really a problem, but rather a quirk, una peculiaridad, a quirk that comes with being a high-level user of the language. So it's a good problem to have, I guess. I felt like that was a bit negative. I was going for liberating, though. I want you to remember that the only person thinking about your accent is you. So let go of that insecurity and instead try to focus on that next step in your development. Maybe it's finding more specific language and learning how to be more precise with what you say. Maybe it's vocabulary, maybe it's expressing more complex ideas, etc. Now, lower level students se encuentran o se topan con, they run into a different version of the accent trap. Their problem is that they think their accent isn't good enough to even try to communicate in English at times. I'm talking about the people who maybe have to speak during an upcoming meeting at work or have to pitch something to an English-speaking client and are freaking out about it because they think their accent isn't good enough. For the low-level speaker, the accent trap is a barrier to entry into communication. so it's a bigger issue. It's funny that the same logic and the same solution apply to both situations, but it makes sense because they both stem from the same thing. I want to feel more confident when I speak, right? My advice for low-level speakers is to not worry too much about your accent and instead work on getting your fluency up. My favorite piece of advice is to just start talking out loud, en voz alta, out loud, when you're alone. When you're at home, narrate what you're doing, what you have to do, what you just did, etc. It sounds a bit insane if you're not someone who has ever talked to yourself when you're alone, but it's kind of a great exercise. Make mistakes. And if you're not sure about how to say something, look it up. Búscalo, look it up. It's a really good way to see where the gaps or spaces in your knowledge are. You'll be surprised. Another thing you can do is identify which vowel sounds are the most difficult for you, or which vowel sounds are making you feel insecure, and work on those in isolation. Maybe it's the in wood. Maybe it's the in onion. Maybe it's more of a consonant situation and you're having a hard time with the combination of st as in lasts, casts, podcasts, etc. So you have to work on that. I think it's good to identify why you're feeling insecure so you can work at it. But the point I want to make is don't let it control you. Practice, practice, and practice. If you consider yourself an intermediate speaker, then you'll find yourself somewhere on that spectrum. Let's say trending more towards one side or the other depending on how much exposure and practice you're getting. The concept of an intermediate speaker is a strange one because most people consider themselves intermediate, so I've been fooled before. I don't know what a true intermediate speaker should sound like anymore. I like that idea for an episode, why so many people consider themselves to be intermediate speakers, and also that intermediate plateau that people talk about. Why intermediate speakers feel like their progress has become stagnant, estancado, stagnant, or stagnated too. What I want you to take away from this episode is this. Don't spend your time thinking if your accent is perfect or if it's good enough. It's not worth it and nobody cares. I know it's not as easy as I'm making it out to be. No es tan fácil como lo estoy haciendo parecer. It's not as easy as I'm making it out to be. I'm aware, I know. But what I want you to do is slowly, over time, fight against that insecurity. If you're a lower level student, go make mistakes. The faster you make them, the faster you'll learn. There's no way around it. And if you're a higher level student, make peace with who you are. And remember that a language spoken really well with a foreign accent is something that is considered exotic and cool. So don't worry about it too much. It's actually a plus for a lot of people. I hope this advice helps, and it's something that you can put to use right now, right after listening to this podcast. Before we go, I want to do a quick vocabulary check. At some point of the episode, I said to stem from. Stem spelled S-T-E-M, como suena. To stem from something means to come from or be caused by. I said that something stems from insecurity, como que viene de insecurity. A stem is also un tallo, like from a plant. You can think of a plant with a stem and how little flowers and other parts of the plant are coming from it. At least that's what I picture, that's what I imagine. I also used the word drive as well. I said the drive or ambition to push yourself is admirable. So in this case, drive doesn't mean conducir or manejar, as we say in Peru, as in to drive a car. In this sense, it means determination and ambition to achieve something, para conseguir algo, to achieve something. In that same sentence, I also use the word admirable, admirable, something that is worthy of admiration. I know you know what it means because it's the same in Spanish, but this one was more about the pronunciation. Admirable. I know those sobresdrújulas or words that have the emphasis on the fourth to last syllable can be difficult, so practice it. Another example is effortlessly. Effortlessly. Dun, 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 dun. Try those when you get a second because, again, they can be tricky. To be fooled is something I also said. I said, I've been fooled before. Que te engañen, basically. To be fooled or to get fooled. I said that I've been fooled by intermediate speakers in the past. I also said, your best bet. Tu mejor opción. I just really like this one and wanted to make sure you clocked it or that you noticed it. To clock something means to notice something and have it in mind. If I ask you, what's the fastest way to the airport? You could say something like, your best bet is to take the train. It's like tu mejor apuesta, your best bet. To stop at nothing es una frase hecha. It means exactly what you think it does. He'll stop at nothing until he's taken over the company. Yo qué sé. You get the idea. All right, that's today's episode. That's this first episode of season 2 of English with Dane. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope you got something from this episode. The best way to support English with Dane is to follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Don't be shy. Hit that follow button. Another great way to support the show is to share it with a friend or coworker who you think would really enjoy it. I want the show to grow so I can put more resources into it and make it as good as I can be. If there's any subject in particular you want me to talk about, leave a comment on this episode or write to me on social media at English with Dane on Instagram and TikTok, or on my personal account at Dane Riverola. All right, talk soon.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.